She never imagined you would actually leave. In her mind, no matter how many times she disrespected you, tested your patience, or treated your loyalty as disposable, you would always be there, waiting, hurting, and hoping. But now the story has shifted. You're standing at a crossroads, numb yet awake, angry yet clear-eyed, asking yourself why your devotion was punished while her chaos was rewarded. You gave everything. You stayed longer than you should. You fought harder than you needed, and in the end, she pulled away, ignored your effort, and used your emotions as weapons. But here's the truth. This message isn't for men who still cling to weakness. It's for the man who has finally had enough. The man who refuses to beg for the bare minimum. The man ready to turn his pain into power. Because when a woman no longer values you, the greatest way to respond is not through anger or revenge, but through results. Not by proving yourself to her, but by becoming unreachable to her. This isn't about jealousy. It's about rising so high that her access is permanently cut off. This video will show you how to reclaim your energy, rebuild your peace, and rise in silence until your glow lingers in her memory. If you've ever been treated like an option, this is your turning point. Comment below. I choose peace, and if you're ready to rise above the pain, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and let's build the strength she never expected you to find. Number 1, she hates when you're unbothered. She expects you to react, to panic, to chase her down, and to question yourself endlessly, because that is the cycle she has always counted on. For her, being the center of your world was never in doubt. She believed every silence, every argument, and every moment of distance would orbit back to her. But the day you stop orbiting, the day you pull your energy back and refuse to give her a reaction, that is the day the cycle shatters. You break the pattern. You become untouchable, not because you are pretending to be above her, but because you are no longer available for her games of emotional control. This is not about playing games yourself. In fact, it is about refusing to play at all. You choose peace instead of her chaos. You stop explaining your choices for her comfort. You stop bending yourself just to prove you are enough. And when that happens, she panics. She panics because she never prepared for the silence, the calmness, the steady indifference. She scrolls through your feed, watches your stories, tries to decode your absence. But there is nothing left to decode. You are not there. You are building. You are rising, and it is not a performance. It is not staged to provoke her. It is real life. You no longer respond to her signals, not out of anger or spite, but because you no longer see her as your priority. That indifference cuts deeper than confrontation ever could. You stop being her therapist. You stop being her source of validation. You become your own solution. You rebuild your mornings with discipline. You guard your evenings with focus. You repair your sleep, your health, your body, your drive. You read. You train. You write your goals on the wall and chase them every single day. You surround yourself with men of purpose, and you eliminate every leak of energy that once drained you. And as you rise higher, she begins to shrink. Not because you tried to harm her, but because your growth exposes the truth of her stagnation. You hurt her not by shouting, but by healing, not by ignoring, but by transforming. You become the man she thought only existed in stories, the kind of man she believed could never be real. And when she finally realizes what she has lost, it is already too late. You no longer wait for closure, because you became your own closure. You no longer crave her attention, because you have outgrown the need for it. Now your silence, your calm, your focus, and your glow, that is the only punishment she will ever understand. So if you have been left questioning your worth, remember this truth: your value was never in her hands. It has always been in yours. Now it is time to act like it. Number 2, ignoring her kills her control. She used to predict your every move, as if she had the script of your life memorized. She knew when you would text, when you would fold, when you would apologize. She could sense your desperation, like clockwork. But now there's only distance. And that distance eats at her, because the man who once orbited her world has now discovered his own sun. You don't chase closure anymore. You create new beginnings. You ignore her not with cruelty, but with mastery. And mastery comes from self-respect. It comes from knowing that silence can speak louder than words. That stillness can carry more weight than 1,000 explanations. You've broken the cycle, the endless back and forth, the begging for scraps, the constant pursuit. It ends the moment you decide you're no longer a participant. She will test you. Of course, she'll use silence as bait. She'll drop crumbs of attention. She may even create fake emergencies, hoping you'll break your resolve. But you don't bite anymore. Why? Because you've had enough of being manipulated like a yo-yo in the hands of someone who treats affection like a transaction. She thought you were just another desperate echo in her inbox, someone she could summon with half a smile or a delayed reply. But now she finds herself checking your profile twice, triple tapping, just to feel something. That feeling, however, is not power. It's loss. You have become the absence that cannot be replaced. Your ignoring isn't passive. It is purposeful. It is sharp. You replace reaction with reflection. You replace excuses with execution. You take all the energy you once wasted on chasing and pour it into building. While she's crafting her next test, you're already years ahead, constructing a life she never believed you had the discipline to build. She once told her friends she had you wrapped around her finger. Now she doesn't mention you at all, because your glow has become undeniable proof of what she lost. You don't engage. You don't explain. You don't negotiate. You level up and let the silence speak. And that silence, it speaks louder than any argument, sharper than any insult. That silence is the consequence of a woman who once believed your time and attention were free. She underestimated a man who finally chose himself, and now she is forced to watch from the sidelines as you live a story she can't edit, rewrite, or insert herself into. You are not ignoring her out of hatred. You are prioritizing your peace, your progress, and your purpose. That is what destroys her control forever. Because every time she checks her phone and sees no missed calls, no unread messages, no desperate attempts from you, it chips away at the illusion she once carried. For the first time, she has become invisible to the man who once made her feel like the center of the universe. That switch from being worshipped to being ignored feels like rejection, but it's bigger than rejection from you. It's rejection from reality itself. It forces her to question everything she once leaned on: her beauty, her influence, her choices. And the harshest truth is this: you no longer care. You don't need her validation. You don't need her closure. You don't even need to hate her. You've simply outgrown her. The man she thought she left behind, that man no longer exists. The man you've become doesn't even remember the version of her who once had power over you. You're not cruel. You're not acting. You're simply indifferent. And that indifference is not staged. It's real. It's grounded. And it eats at her every night when she sees your progress, your presence, and your peace. She wishes you would fight. She hopes you'd argue. She longs for the old cycle to resume. But your silence tells a story she can't ignore. You've moved on to a life where she no longer has a role. Start now. Build your system. Refuse access to those who don't value it. Practice this detachment in every area of life, in your texts, your tone, your choices. No dramatic exit, just steady elevation. Let her feel the weight of what she caused, not through vengeance, but through your victory. Because ignoring her is not punishment, it's the language of a man who has finally moved on. If you are tired of feeling disposable, if you are done allowing disrespect to slide because of your fear of being alone, then it's time to embrace what most men were never taught: emotional control, discipline, and peace. These are the tools that turn pain into power, heartbreak into freedom. And once you master them, you will never again be someone's option. Number 3, she can't handle your detachment. For so long, she believed you would chase endlessly. Each time she withdrew, she expected you to step closer. Every delayed reply, every emotional wall, every cold dismissal, she counted on it being answered by your pursuit. But this time, you did not follow. You walked away. Quietly and deliberately, not out of spite, not to prove a point, but because the version of you who once needed her attention has ceased to exist. Your detachment isn't a tactic, it's your truth. You've learned to sit with your pain instead of running from it. You've confronted your need for approval and cut the chain of emotional dependency that once held you captive. That's what unsettles her most. She realizes now she no longer lives rent-free in your mind. She once controlled you with affection, starved you with withdrawal, confused you with mixed signals. But your peace is no longer something she can interrupt. You've stepped out of the emotional loop, the exhausting cycle of explaining yourself, apologizing for existing, begging to be seen. That cycle has ended. You don't beg anymore. You build. You construct mornings with discipline. You protect your nights with purpose. You nourish your body, repair your mind, and guard your energy. And what terrifies her is that your absence isn't temporary. You're not waiting for her to change. You're not leaving the door cracked open. You've moved on, and not toward another woman, but toward a deeper version of yourself. This kind of detachment cannot be faked. It's not a performance you put on for the world. It comes from heartbreak, from confusion, from growth. It comes from nights of doubt, days of unanswered questions, and the eventual realization that no one is coming to save you. It comes from building yourself from scratch until your identity no longer requires her recognition. That's why she can't handle it. She knows it's real. She knows it means she lost access forever. She thought your detachment was a phase, that it would pass, that eventually you'd fold under the weight of silence and come crawling back. But you didn't. You grew stronger, and each day that passed without her name appearing on your screen, she felt it deeper, not the absence of words, but the absence of need. You no longer crave her approval. You no longer chase her affection. You don't seek her explanations. Your peace has become your priority. And peace wasn't won easily. It was forged in solitude, in discipline, in painful honesty. That's what strips her of control. Because now she can no longer trigger you, guilt trip you, or tempt you back into chaos. She hates it. Not because you've hurt her, but because the version of you who would have done anything just to be chosen is gone forever. That man is dead. What remains is someone grounded, someone who chooses himself daily, someone who walks away, not with bitterness, but with self-respect, and that self-respect has become freedom, and freedom terrifies people who only know how to manipulate chaos. So, when she sends the late-night texts, posts subtle reminders, or shows up where you are, you don't flinch. You don't react. You understand clearly. She isn't searching for love. She is searching for access. And access is something you no longer provide. Detachment is not indifference. It is healing in motion. It is the moment you stop begging to be seen and start seeing yourself clearly. It is when you stop outsourcing your worth and begin embodying it. Detachment doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you focused. And focus is the one state her confusion cannot survive. So when she wonders why her games no longer work, when she feels invisible to the man who once gave her everything, she'll realize too late. You've outgrown her. You've outgrown the story. And most importantly, you've outgrown the need to be chosen. Number 4, you stop explaining yourself. There comes a point where a man grows tired of explaining himself. At one time, you justified everything, why you stayed loyal, why you cared so deeply, why you put in effort when it wasn't reciprocated. You defended your choices as though your truth required her stamp of approval, even though she never truly respected it. But then comes the shift. You stop talking. You start acting, where once your words tried to convince. Now, your actions do. The speaking. They roar louder than the sentences you used to string together. When she notices the change, her first instinct is to ask, "Why are you different?" But you don't answer. Not because you're avoiding the truth, because you've outgrown the need to explain. You've learned the hard lesson. She never listened anyway. Her goal was not to understand, but to measure her power through your devotion. And now, the power she once tested is gone. What she cannot reach, she cannot control. You no longer outline your boundaries, you embody them. You don't describe your distance, you live it. You don't sit at the table of endless negotiations with someone who never intended to meet you halfway. By the time she finally tries to comprehend what happened, silence is the only reply left. And silence, ironically, becomes the loudest truth. When she looks back, she sees the history you left behind, the times you gave effort, the times you were loyal, the truth you offered without disguise. But now it's too late. That version of you, the one willing to beg for recognition, is gone. You refuse to invest your emotional energy in debates with people incapable of emotional depth. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. And clarity is what unsettles her most. She sees, now you're not lost, you're laser-focused, you're not stuck in confusion, you're resolved. No dramatic endings, no endless cycles, no final fight for closure, just evolution. And that's a language she cannot speak, because explanations, you've realized, are a form of currency. And you were overspending every plea, every justification, every attempt to be understood was an unnecessary cost, draining you while giving her leverage. But once you stop, you reclaim that power. Now she sees a man steady in his calm, not because he feels nothing, but because he has accepted that his peace outweighs her chaos. You don't fire off long messages. You don't reopen old arguments. You don't break your standards just to prove your worth to someone blind to it. She used to rely on your words to control the frame. Every explanation you gave was a rope she could pull. But now there is no rope. Your silence is the wall she cannot climb. You enter rooms without announcing yourself, yet your quiet confidence fills the air. You move without fanfare, and she feels the absence. It unsettles her because she knows she no longer influences your world. The questions will come, late-night texts, probing remarks, maybe even pleas. Are you really done with me? But nothing changes. The man who once needed her to understand has disappeared. What remains is a man who understands himself. And that's the secret. She spirals, not because of your answers, but because of your refusal to give them. The greatest answer a man can offer is no longer needing to explain. Silence is final. Silence is power. And silence, above all, is freedom. Number 5, you're genuinely happy without her. There was a time when you believed your entire happiness revolved around her. Her smile felt like sunlight. Her presence felt like oxygen. And her attention was the fuel that kept you alive. If she texted back quickly, your chest would fill with validation. If she pulled away or disappeared, you would crumble into pieces. You made her the axis of your world, while she treated you as an option. That imbalance nearly destroyed you, but now things have shifted. Now, you wake up each morning with clarity. Your mind is no longer clouded by wondering if she'll call. Instead, you're building, creating, working, and healing. You've discovered joy, not in her approval, but in silence, in discipline, and in the choice to value yourself instead of begging for scraps. That peace, real, unshakable peace, is something she cannot stand to face. Because when she looks at you now, she realizes you didn't just survive without her, you thrived. This isn't fake happiness you post to make her jealous. This is real. You're eating better, sleeping deeper, thinking sharper, and laughing louder than you ever did when she was the center of your attention. You've created a life that no longer revolves around her existence. And that shift, that's what breaks the illusion she once held over you. She thought you'd stay stuck, orbiting endlessly around her. She thought you'd wait, paralyzed, hoping for a someday that would never come. But now she sees the glow on your face, and it isn't for her. She sees your progress, and it wasn't built for her validation. You're happy, and she had nothing to do with it. That truth crushes her deeper than silence ever could. She notices the gym pictures, the business wins, the smiles you no longer filter for her approval. She realizes you've become a man who doesn't need her affection to feel alive. And that realization plants regret inside her. Because if you can be this fulfilled without her, then she never had real power in the first place. She only had access, and that access is gone. Your happiness now is more than peace. It's proof that you've rewritten the rules, that you've retrained your mind, that you've come to see love not as a desperate negotiation for worth, but as something that should be freely earned, equally shared, and deeply respected. You see it now, you live it now, and while she scrolls through old memories, you're out, creating new ones, bold, unapologetic, and untouchable to anyone who cannot meet your value. That is happiness. That is your new standard. The happiest version of you doesn't check her page, doesn't post for her attention, doesn't wait for her return. You've built a life so full of peace and growth that even if she did return, nothing would change. You're no longer waiting for the what if or the maybe someday. You live in the present, and your present is solid, not designed to sting her with jealousy, but built to make you unstoppable. Your laughter echoes now. Your smile is genuine. Your movements are free of hesitation, unbothered by who may be watching. That's what shatters her. Because you've detached your joy from her presence, you no longer collapse when she withdraws, nor do you celebrate when she notices. Your emotions are yours again, and that is your true power. You've become a man with rhythm, purpose, and momentum, and she can't keep up. Not because you ran ahead, but because she stood still while you grew stronger. The routines you built in heartbreak became the foundation of the empire you now walk in daily. She thought you'd sink without her, but instead, you soared. That's what devastates her. She expected you to break down, but instead, you broke the patterns. You broke the silence. You broke the chains of dependence. And now you move with a calm so steady, so grounded, that no apology can ever touch it. She watches, she wonders, but it's over. You've won, because happiness was never hers to give. It was always yours to build. Number 6, she loses when you level up quietly. She expects your pain to be loud. She wants the heartbreak to be obvious emotional outbursts, desperate late-night posts, and dramatic updates for the world to see. She wants evidence that you miss her, that you're stuck, that you're spiraling without her. But when you choose to level up in silence, it dismantles her entire script. She gets nothing, no access, no front row seat to your healing, no proof that you're drowning. Instead of collapsing, you vanish into purpose. You don't disappear into chaos, you disappear into construction. You step into the gym not to win her attention, but to rebuild your discipline. You open books not for display, but to expand your mind. You invest in your work, not as revenge, but as alignment with your higher path. You don't scream your comeback. You live it. And every step forward echoes the pain she thought would break you. Not as bitterness, but as focus, not as payback, but as progress. She expected you to flex. Instead, you evolve. That's why she can't digest it. Because she thought her absence would destroy you. Instead, it freed you. She scrolls through feeds and finds nothing. No cryptic quotes. No sad songs. No emotional drama. Only silence. And that silence becomes the loudest answer she never wanted. Women like her don't truly fear being blocked. They fear being erased. They fear irrelevance. And when you level up without broadcasting it, you strip her of her last weapon, her ability to insert herself into your story. She thought you'd build a better life, just so she could admire it from afar. But you built one where her shadow doesn't even exist. That's the part she never anticipated. That your success would no longer include her name. Your silence cuts deeper than any update ever could, because it leaves her guessing, and guessing feeds her regret. This is why documenting your process matters not for her eyes, but for your clarity. Track your habits. Write down your progress. Mark every milestone, because your growth deserves to be witnessed by you, not by her. She never believed you'd actually leave her behind. She assumed you'd always keep a door cracked open, that no matter how far you advanced, part of it would still be tied to her, that every victory you earned would somehow reflect back on her. But when you rise quietly, you shatter that illusion. You didn't replace her. You outgrew her. And that's something her ego cannot withstand. Your silence is not a trick. It's not about playing games. It's proof. Proof that your validation no longer depends on attention. Proof that healing is private. Proof that real transformation happens in the dark, long before it's visible to the world. Because true growth doesn't chase applause. It doesn't crave reaction. It aligns you with yourself. Now she's locked out, not because you're hiding, but because she forfeited the right to witness the best version of you. She gave that privilege away when she underestimated you. Now, from a distance, she stalks. She sees fragments, but never the full picture. She wonders what room you're in, what goals you're crushing, what life you're building that no longer revolves around her. That mystery is what eats her alive, because the silence you live in now speaks louder than her assumptions ever could. You move without noise. You expand without explanation. And in doing so, you become untouchable. This is your era of quiet power, an era that will echo for the rest of her life. Number 7, no reaction is your power. She thrives on your response. She waits for it, anticipates it, even relies on it to prove she still holds sway over you. Every jab, every cryptic message, every subtle post, it's all designed as bait. What she truly wants isn't closure or conversation. She wants your anger. She wants your sadness. Because if you react, the spotlight remains on her, and she controls the script. But when you don't, when you scroll past without a word, when you carry on with your plans, when your energy remains unshaken, that's when her grip begins to crumble. No reaction is not weakness. It is restraint. It is the highest form of self-command. It is the discipline of choosing inner calm over outward chaos. You learn quickly that not every attack deserves attention. Not every trick requires explanation. The moment you stop rewarding manipulation with your emotions, you reclaim your authority. And when she realizes her usual strategies fail, she begins to unravel. Silence, after all, screams louder than shouting. Stillness cuts deeper than rage. Calm terrifies those who feed on chaos. She pushes buttons you no longer carry, She fires arrows that no longer pierce. Because you've grown, you've stepped past her reach. Her tactics lose weight against a man who has outpaced her games. That is the essence of no reaction. It's not passive. It's powerful. It shields your mind, keeps your goals visible, and guards your peace. While she weaves webs of drama, you're laying bricks of legacy. She deals in illusions of control. But you've unplugged. You've chosen mastery. You no longer argue with the insecure. You no longer plead with the disloyal. You no longer explain yourself to the ungrateful. Instead, you detach with dignity. That kind of silence carries weight. It lingers long after the conversation ends. It echoes in her mind because she is used to being the center of your emotions, the reason you raised your voice, wrote long texts, or sat waiting in silence for her to change. She once believed she could always draw a reaction from you. And once she could, but not anymore. You've evolved. Your silence is no longer confusion, it is clarity. Your calm is no longer weakness, it is strategy. You no longer need to win arguments because your life itself has become the evidence of what she dismissed. You're not fighting for her approval, you're fighting to never again betray yourself by slipping back into the man who explained, begged, and broke. When you stop reacting, you start reclaiming your focus, your clarity, your direction. And in that stillness, her hold dissolves because her influence relied on your lack of self-mastery. Now, every time you ignore the text, every time you see the post and remain silent, every time you live without checking who's watching, you reprogram your very identity. You become steady. You become untouchable. And that quiet strength, it echoes far louder than any words. Number 8. She regrets when you replace her peacefully. She always expected drama. She assumed the ending would be loud, chaotic, and messy. That you'd shout, accuse, fight to prove your point, or worse, scramble to win her back. But you didn't. You didn't give her the explosion she rehearsed in her head. You didn't perform for her validation. Instead, you replaced her silently, without spectacle, without revenge. And that silence, that calm exit, that's what unsettles her most. She thought you'd run into the arms of another woman just to spark jealousy. She thought you'd crumble in her absence, desperate for her attention. But instead, you turned inward. You didn't replace her with someone new. You replaced her with someone better yourself. That's what burns, because she can't compete with peace. She can't undo the progress you've made. No argument. No player. No attempt at manipulation can reach a man who has already found balance. You didn't chase revenge. You didn't broadcast your transformation. You simply elevated quietly, consistently, gracefully. And that's the kind of replacement that leaves a permanent scar. When she checks your name now, she doesn't see bitterness. She doesn't see anger. She sees a man too full of purpose, too aligned with his mission, too immersed in peace to entertain old chaos. And that's what she regrets. Not that you moved on, but that you moved forward. You didn't try to prove she was wrong. You simply lived in a way that showed she was never essential to your survival. She expected you to stay stuck in the loop of memories, replaying, regretting, questioning yourself. But you didn't. You disconnected. Not loudly, not for attention, but permanently. You replaced her with mornings filled with clarity, routines that build your future, nights where self-respect tucks you into bed. You chose healing instead of holding on, discipline instead of despair, growth instead of guilt. And what terrifies her is the grace in your detachment, because walking away without rage shows more strength than any argument ever could. That quiet dignity rewrites the narrative. It reveals that her control was always temporary, always fragile, always dependent on your willingness to play the game. Now you've outgrown it. You don't argue with the insecure. You don't seek closure from the disloyal. You don't beg the ungrateful. You walk forward with peace. And that's the ending she never prepared for. She regrets not because you replaced her, but because of how you replaced her. With serenity, with progress, with an unshakable commitment to your own evolution. She thought she'd be unforgettable, but your calmness proved otherwise. She thought her absence would leave a hole in your chest, but instead, it opened space for discipline, clarity, and a stronger version of you. That's her regret, that she became part of your past, not your downfall. That she lost access to a man who outgrew the need to prove anything to her. Because the truth is simple, you didn't replace her to make her jealous. You replaced her because peace mattered more than her chaos. And once a man learns to guard his peace, there's nothing more attractive, more powerful, or more permanent. The truth is this: you were never weak for loving her. Love is not weakness, but you will become weak if you keep allowing that pain to define who you are. She played her game, believing you'd never learn the rules. But now the choice is in your hands. You can stay trapped in confusion, or you can rise with clarity and purpose. This isn't just about moving on from her. It's about building a life so unshakable that even if she came back begging, she couldn't disrupt it. If you're tired of being the man who always gives, always forgives, and always ends up walked over, then it's time to protect yourself with the Stoic relationship blueprint. This isn't just another book. It's your armor, your compass, your wake-up call. Inside, you'll find principles and insights most men never hear until it's too late. Once you have it, it's yours for life, a constant guide to return to whenever old pain tries to creep back in. If you're ready to stop being controlled and start living from strength, then comment below, "I choose strength." Like this video, subscribe, and help other men discover these truths.